Good morning and welcome to the regularly scheduled briefing involving safety and security as we progress through the trial of Derek Chauvin. As you all know, the planning purposes have been divided into three different phases. The first being jury selection, the second, which began about 9 or 10 days ago, involving the trial itself, and the third will be the jury deliberation, followed by the verdict. Right now we are in phase 2, and I want to note and reinforce that we will not be weighing in any way, shape, or form on the substance of the trial. We want to make sure that these criminal and justice proceedings are upheld and make sure that integrity of the law is there in every respect. So while the nation's eyes are focused very firmly across the street, city officials have not in any way slowed their work here at City Hall, making sure that safety and security is paramount, ensuring that people are able to peacefully protest and that First Amendment rights are protected, and that we're able to continue to deliver our city services with excellence. That work has continued. And I'll also note that our director of the Office of Violence Prevention, Sasha Cotton, has been doing that very necessary outreach work in community for quite some time. She's developed and formalized relationships with a number of different community organizations, neighborhood associations, block captains, and community leaders to ensure that we have this two-way stream of communication throughout, that we're able to receive intelligence and information from individuals that are on the ground, and we're also able to disseminate information on a very quick and timely basis. She's been doing this work for years now, using this community-centered and public health-based approach to help ensure that everyone can be free of violence. And with Director Cotton at the helm, we've been working to breaking that cycle of violence. First, working on preventing violent acts before they begin. Second, making sure that we're intervening as violent acts are taking place. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're healing our community after the process. So months ago, we knew that these community organizations and connections would be of critical importance and that they would be a critical piece of upholding community safety. So what we've been doing is proactively doing outreach within the community, coordinating with a number of these different groups, and today we're proud to announce that the Office of Violence Prevention has finalized the contracts with 7 different community organizations that Director Cotton will very shortly announce. The development and evolution of these partnerships are ongoing. We are constantly rejiggering both the platform as well as our strategy to make sure that we're better able to respond to community needs and safety needs as they're happening on the ground. We know that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. These community strategies are dependent on the respective community in which they're being utilized. And so that there will be some differentiation depending on whether you're in North Minneapolis or South Minneapolis and which cultural community you're working with. I also want to note that community safety is a responsibility for all of us here in the city, not just those that are working within our city enterprise. Our residents have a responsibility here as well. We all have to be working together. So if you are in need of any form of non-emergency assistance, we want to make sure that you call 311. Call 911 in case of any emergency assistance, whether that's fire, EMS, or police response. And last week we also announced a tip line. So if you are seeing something on the ground that looks out of place, that is concerning, please give this tip line a call. And that number is 612-673-5335. Again, the tips line is 612-673-5335. Please use that line if at any time you are seeing something that doesn't look quite right throughout this trial. Also, businesses and property owners can call 612-673-2499 with any questions about business operations during this trial and any general information regarding regulations or resources that the city will be making available. I'll also note that progress continues to take place at 38th and Chicago. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, the chief met with a number of different jurisdictions with state partners, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, Metro Transit Police, as well as our mutual aid partners to ensure that safety in the neighborhoods surrounding 38th and Chicago will be met. We also want to make sure that the neighborhood feels safe in every single respect. The chief also announced, the city also announced an intention to provide forgivable loans to businesses that have been impacted over this last year. Those loans, those forgivable loans, will go out in $50,000 increments to somewhere between 15 and 25 businesses around the intersection of 38th and Chicago, up to about $1 million. And today, Deputy Director Eric Hansen will provide additional information on how this program serves as an extension over the months to come, and how we'll be coordinating with a number of different community groups and residents. So I want to close by saying thank you. Thank you to all of our Minneapolis residents that have gone through just a barrage of trauma over this last year that in many respects culminates with this trial. We know that tensions build, especially as we lead into deliberations and the verdict, and there's been an enormous amount of work that our communities across our city, across the region that have been working on together. I want to say thank you. We are so grateful to you for this work. We are so grateful to partner with you. We're very much in this together. And with that, I will turn it over to our Deputy Chief, Amelia Huffman, who can provide an update on both Operation Safety Net, as well as a reminder about the new tip line. Deputy Chief.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor Fry. Operation Safety Net continues the crucial work of keeping our residents, businesses, and visitors safe. We're happy to announce that there have been no protest-related arrests and no substantial damage to property. We continue to work with community members to ensure that people's First Amendment rights to assemble and make their voices heard are preserved, while also allowing our city's residents, businesses, workers, and visitors to function safely. MPD staff assigned throughout the city are committed to working closely with our neighborhood, community, and business groups to answer questions and address concerns, not only during Operation Safety Net, but every day, to build a safer and more connected Minneapolis. The Minneapolis Police Department has kicked off a new tips line for people to call for issues that do not need immediate attention. You can reach the tip line at 612-673-5335, where you will leave a recorded message. Updated technology allows us to handle a much larger volume of tips than we have in the past, and moving these calls that do not require immediate attention to the tip line will allow our Minneapolis 911 staff to provide critical assistance to callers faced with an in-progress emergency. Calls about those in-progress incidents, suspicious items, or people still on scene should be routed through 911. 911 is the fastest way to get help from police, fire, or ambulance when an incident threatens the life, safety, or property of anyone in our community. Lastly, in speaking with our local, state, and federal partners in Operation Safety Net, we have not identified any credible threats to our area as a result of the trial. We will continue to diligently monitor and assess those risks. And now I would like to turn it over to Director Sasha Cotton.
Good morning, and thank you, Deputy Chief and Mayor. I'm Sasha Cotton, the Director of the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention, and we are here and really pleased to announce the ways in which we are partnering specifically with community around the design and implementation of community patrols. These patrols will be working specifically right now during the trial, but will continue to do their work beyond this phase to do engagement with community. The focus of this is really the deep investment that the Office of Violence Prevention has in community-led strategies. We recognize that centering the voice and expertise of communities in our process around public safety is an essential function. And through this process of funding organizations, we believe that we are demonstrating that investment. So to announce those agencies, I will list their names. We have identified 7 organizations. There were 17 applications submitted. The organizations that have been identified for resources are A Mother's Love, the Center for Multicultural Mediation, the Native American Community Development Institute, Corcoran Neighborhood and Touch Outreach as a partnership, Change Equals Opportunity, Restoration Incorporated, and We Push for Peace. The Office of Violence Prevention looks forward to working with these agencies and others who may not be funded at this time to provide safety, de-escalation, conflict resolution, and community engagement with our community, both during the trial and beyond. Groups will not only be doing community trials, but many of them have submitted recommendations to do community gatherings, obviously in a way that is safe from COVID. They're also doing healing circles, events that would allow them to feed the community, as well as the patrol work that they'll be doing in the various communities of Minneapolis. And so we look forward to this opportunity to bring forward these kinds of solutions, and you should be seeing these agencies out in the community in the next week. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Deputy Director Eric Hansen.
Thank you, Sasha. Good morning. My name is Eric Hansen. I'm the city's Director of Economic Policy and Development. And I have a couple of reminders and then some more information on a new loan program that we're pursuing through the City Council at this moment in time. First, I want to remind everybody that businesses are open here in Minneapolis, and it's very critical for both the business owners, property owners, and the workers that we, as a community, continue to shop local. As we go through the pandemic, we're starting to see, we've passed over a year since the stay-at-home order from Governor Walz that closed thousands of businesses within Minneapolis, and they're still struggling to rebound from that, but we are starting to see some lights at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to note one of those lights is the lights at Target Field as the Twins get ready for their home opener with fans. I know we're playing Seattle and they brought the rain today, so maybe they're scared of our lineup. But we will get those games out, and that is helping the business community downtown as well as around the city start to see some set of normalcy. We still have some uncertain times ahead of us. We have reminders for businesses to have a plan through the trial period. That means to make sure you understand your insurance policies, make sure they're up to date, make sure your business's important documents are secure. If you choose to hire security, make sure that's a licensed and bonded security agent, and know your neighbors and your business associations. We continue to work with the business associations, the businesses, and the technical services providers through regular meetings so that they're connected with Operation Safety Net. And as the mayor said, we have a special line for businesses and property owners at 612-673-2499 to connect directly with the city's small business team and economic development team. You can also connect with us through email at smallbusiness@minneapolismn.gov. Finally, I'll talk about the $50,000 proposed forgivable loan program. We are connected with the process of reconnecting Chicago and 38th Street and George Floyd Square to vehicle traffic. This has been a very tumultuous time for businesses on that corner. We proposed through the City Council process last week a $50,000 forgivable loan program for businesses and property owners within the square. If approved next Friday, we'll be reaching out to businesses in that square about the application process. We expect that to be a pretty straightforward application process. Businesses and property owners within the square would be eligible for one $50,000 loan, and that would be forgiven if that business is open and remains in the square within 1 year. We'll be reaching out to businesses after the approval by the City Council, so in about 2 weeks' time, to begin the process of getting the information on how to apply. The city will be servicing that loan program, and so we're expecting that if approved next week, that funds will be available for businesses mid to late May of this year. And with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director, and we'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Are you receiving any more information about when the trial might wrap? And can you provide any more detail about how the city's preparations are going to change around that time?
Thank you, Liz. So the question was, are we receiving any additional information regarding when the trial might wrap? Obviously, we can't predict the number of witnesses that either the prosecution or the defense will bring forward. And so we don't have an exact date, but as has been reported, it appears that the trial is moving very expediently and seems to be going a little bit quicker than was originally thought.
And how is that affecting your planning? Is the city going to be scaling up resources sooner, and when will residents start to see changes?
So the question was, is the city going to be scaling up resources sooner given the pace of the trial? From the very beginning, we divided the trial into those three phases, the first being jury selection, the second the trial itself, and then finally deliberations and verdict. We will be ready to respond regardless of when we transition into the next phase. I know that our multi-jurisdictional partners are ready as well. And so I know Chief Arredondo has been working with a series of other jurisdictions and individuals from State Patrol and National Guard. And as I noted, the presence on the ground will have a visible increase over the next couple of weeks, of course, culminating with the deliberation and the verdict itself. I want to importantly note that the work we are doing is not limited to law enforcement. That certainly is a component, but the work that Director Cotton mentioned and the 7 additional community organizations that will be receiving funding and others beyond that will be very critical components of the work that is taking place over these next several weeks.
I'm Lorenzo Hall with Care 11. We know that Chief Arredondo is noticeably absent today. He testified on Monday. I can only imagine that was emotionally and mentally taxing. How is he holding up, and is he on the job today?
So the question is, how's Chief Arredondo doing? The chief is rock solid. I won't get into any commentary regarding the substance of what he testified to on Monday, but what I will say is that he and I are working around the clock to ensure the safety and security in the city. The chief is upbeat. He's working very hard for the residents of this city, and I'm proud to partner with him.
Mayor, about these organizations you're partnering with, I'm wondering how well you think this is going to be received by people in the community. Other efforts from the Office of Violence Prevention have not gone as well, like the police-sponsored Black Panther screening that they had to cancel this fall, the violence interrupters. I mean, it's clear that there's a lack of trust for efforts coming from the city. How's this going to be different?
So first, I want to come back to some of the substance of your question. What are you referencing specifically that has not gone well?
Well, like the cancellation of the Black Panthers effort, the screening at Chicago on 20th last fall. I mean, there's been some.
Yeah, if Director Cotton, could you come up? I'm not even aware of that. Yeah, please.
Yeah, happy to take that question. So I think that the movie showing that you're referring to is one isolated incident, and the interrupters are alive and well, although we did take a pause in order to make sure that they had absolutely the best training as we're building out a new model. That is a normal part of building out a new evidence-based practice to be able to stop and start. The movie showing did receive some pushback, and we heard requests from the community to cancel that event, and so we did, because we want to be operating in cooperation with community, not imposing ourselves. And so we believe that in spite of not proceeding with the showing is a success. When we are able to take note as a community-driven organization in the Office of Violence Prevention from community, that is the role that we should be playing. So we don't see that as a failure. We see it as a way of collaborating with community. We believe that these groups are going to be successful because they are anchored in community. They're not organizations that are unknown to community. They're organizations that have been working in community, that do work with community outside of this funding stream, and that they are well received by the communities that they work in.
And how are they going to work that's any different from someone calling 911? I mean, are they going to have a direct line into the city? I mean, what difference will it make from just getting on your phone and calling if you see something?
So again, we believe that community-driven strategies are an important part of public safety. And so, of course, law enforcement is a responding agency. What we're talking about is proactive engagement. So they will be doing regular patrol and engagement in their communities, as well as providing a wide range of community-invested services. Like I'd mentioned before, trauma and healing services, food distribution. This is really about engaging with our community during a very tense time and ensuring that they have access to the best information that the city can provide, but that they can also feed back to us any concerns that they're seeing and hearing from community residents so that we're all on the same page. That is really the goal here. Again, trying to do the best that we can to ensure that the community's voice is elevated in the conversation around safety is really at the heart and center of what the Office of Violence Prevention attempts to do, and we believe that these kinds of partnerships are a demonstration of that work.
Director Cotton, will these community groups be just confined to their community? Can you call them out to downtown or any other area if they're needed for safety purposes?
Yes, thank you for that question around deployment. We will both be expecting our patrols to do regular community-based work that is regionalized. So as they applied to either work north, south, or citywide. However, contractually, they are available to be deployed in the midst that we need them and can be deployed to any part of the city where we feel like they could be of help.
How will people know that that's what they're seeing? I mean, if you're out on the street, obviously some of these activities will be organized and have to be announced ahead of time, so, people will be known, but will you be able to recognize them if you see them?
Absolutely. Organizations will be wearing uniforms with the names of their organizations on them when they are out working on behalf of the city, so that they are easy to identify and known to the community, as well as being already known to the community. I think most of our community members, whether they're north or south, have relationships and knowledgeability, at least, about many of the organizations that we're partnering with.
Can you provide more detail about sort of the parameters of their work when they're patrolling? What can they do? What can't they do? And separately, do you have any advice for residents who are feeling traumatized now? Any tips for them?
Yeah, so to your first question, these groups they're really focused on prevention. So this is about de-escalating conflict, engaging with community, providing information and resource. In no way do we see these patrols or our work as replacing the police. So again, to the points that the police department and others have made, if you see something that is emergent, that is an emergency, 911 is the right place to call. These groups are focused on preventing and engaging around the issue of violence prevention and de-escalating the tension that we know exists in community right now and at many times. And so that is really the role that we see them playing. We recognize that public safety is an ecosystem and that different partners within public safety have different skill sets. The skill sets of these groups are really about that engagement, prevention, de-escalation, and conflict resolution. As it pertains to thinking about the community at large, we encourage people to really lean into what makes them feel safe and secure. There are a number of mental health tip lines that people can access. We're happy. I know that some of them exist on our website as it stands right now, but we're happy to connect people with those kinds of resources. But also on a more basic level, staying connected to your neighbors, staying connected to loved ones and family. Honestly, turning the TV off sometimes. We know that watching the trial and watching the news can be triggering. And so at times it is a good idea to turn the TV off and turn away from it and do some of the things that you love, whether that's gardening, spending time with loved ones, catching up on maybe a fictional piece of work, whether that's a book or a television show, but finding ways to tune out is also a healthy tip and strategy. But again, really connecting with your neighbors, knowing what's going on in your block is definitely a way to help people feel safe and secure. And again, knowing what's going on, but keeping it to a minimum that makes you feel safe and comfortable.
Director Cotton, I know a big concern was outsiders coming in. I know the mayor's talked about that. Will these community groups be the eyes and ears of helping MPD notice when people from outside the community coming in to cause trouble, that these community groups will be able to say, hey, these people shouldn't be here?
Yeah, so the slogan of the Office of Violence Prevention is Minneapolis Us. It takes all of us to prevent violence. And I think that is absolutely the strategy here, right? That we see these patrols as certainly being a part of that solution, that we want them, if they see something, to say something, but we hold that up as a value for all Minneapolis residents and people in our city. So if they see something that seems out of place or unusual because they are known well to community and they know what feels right and what doesn't, we certainly want them to be making that call to our office, to the police department, and other local law enforcement. But we also really strongly encourage other community to use both the tip line and 911 if they see something that seems out of line or peculiar as things evolve.
It was mentioned that there have been no arrests or property damage so far, protester-related arrests. Are you surprised by that, and what's working so far?
I believe that is a question really for either our mayor or for law enforcement, and so I would allow them to take that question.
Can you repeat the question real quick?
There have been no protester-related arrests and property damage so far. Are you surprised by that, and what's working so far?
Those that have been safely expressing their First Amendment rights, those that have been protesting thus far in the trial, I think are a wonderful example of how we do this right here in Minneapolis. We want to make sure that those that are marching, those that are expressing themselves, be it in the forum between City Hall and Hennepin County Government Center or out in the street, are safe and are protected. And thus far, we feel that things have been going very well. We're very much appreciative of those that have been protesting thus far, and we're very appreciative as well of the job that our law enforcement has done.
Mayor Jacob Wright,
Yes.
King Demetrius, Move for Justice News. You talk about the $50,000 for the small business loans. What about the individuals who's on trial that's testifying in the behalf of just trying to get some justice for George Floyd? Are they going to be compensated? Are you guys going to have something for them? And also, are there going to be anything for the young individuals that's homeless out here that don't have anywhere to stay and things of that nature? Are you guys going to build any type of housing, shelters, anything for them as well?
So I believe the first part of the question was whether we are compensating individuals that are testifying at the Floyd trial, at the Chauvin trial.
Mainly, are they going to be taken care of? Basically, when someone testifies under some type of big case of this, such as this, they're going to get a lot of scrutiny. Sure. Are they going to be taken care of, not really compensated, but, not going to be targeted? Because a lot of times people testify, they start getting targeted and things of that nature. Just like we know as the jurors, as the trial is ended, they're going to be targeted. So it depends on which way the trial may go.
Sure. I know that there are strategies in place to ensure both witness and juror protection. A lot of that goes beyond the work of the city itself and includes a number of different jurisdictions, but no, there is no compensation of any form, certainly through the city. To the second question regarding those that are experiencing homelessness, it's not as if individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness were not there prior to the pandemic, the economic downturn, the killing of George Floyd, and the subsequent unrest. It's that these fault lines have been particularly exposed even more so over this last year. We have people that are in very rough circumstances that are operating very much on the fringe, and I think it's our obligation as the city to step up as much as we can to provide that base and foundational element of housing. The long-term goal always needs to be stable housing. Now, in the short and immediate term, we also need to be doing as much harm reduction as possible, making sure that people have the city services that they need, that they have wraparound services, whether that's addiction help and treatment, shelter support, and I'll note that the city has added about 3 new shelters in this last year. Most recently, one that is focused and culturally sensitive to our American Indian community, and secondly, the Avivo program, which has 100 tiny homes in an overarching warehouse that gives each individual experiencing homelessness the privacy and the dignity that they deserve. I'm very excited about this new model. I actually just talked with Emily Bastian of Avivo this morning, and she mentioned that already about 51 of the 100 units over at Avivo have been filled. There should be another 25 individuals that will be receiving their tiny home in the next week or so, and we will be progressing from there. And I'll also note that the rate through which we've been able to successfully place people in long-term and stable housing has been much higher than we've seen 5, 6, 8 years ago. And so, are we there yet? Absolutely no. There's a ton of work left to do, and I think we all collectively need to be stepping up from the city to the state to the federal government to ensure that housing is a right for everyone, something that we all believe in. But we are making progress. We are definitely making progress.
Thank you very much.
I'll do one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Federal authorities filed charges in the past couple days for people with ties to the Boogaloo Boys or in connection with the Capitol attacks. Is that in any way tied to Operation Safety Net? And is there a concerted effort to try and sort of pinpoint people with extremist views before the trial wraps?
So the question from Liz Navratil was about the recent coverage involving the Boogaloo Boys, and I believe the fact that the Capitol, Minnesota Capitol, was one of the many targets. I think the Minnesota Capitol was one of the targets was it on January 17th?
Somewhere around
In that
there.
range
There was
anyway?
also an arrest this morning or charges this morning in connection with the January 6th.
Sure. There have been a number of different instances where we've seen involvement from the Boogaloo Boys in our city and in the state of Minnesota. One of those was obviously a planned attack on the Capitol, which was recently reported. Another one was what happened over at the 3rd Precinct, where charges have been brought. And the question is, are we making sure to target individuals that will come from outside of our city, that will use our peaceful protesters as a shield to cause chaos and destruction? The answer is yes, they will absolutely be targeted. And our intelligence programs and our law enforcement are now working very hard to make sure that they root out any of these organizations and find them and make sure that they are arrested.
Mayor, can you talk about police and what kind of resources are being provided to officers to also make sure they're in the right state of mind during this trial as well?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the first
Can you talk
part.
about the resources being
resources.
provided to police to make sure they're also in the right state of mind during this trial? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure they're watching. Again, it's emotionally taxing for them, but
It
they're
is.
also on the job around the clock.
It's a really important point. Our first responders, be it EMS, firefighters, or police officers, have experienced quite a bit of trauma themselves over these last couple of years. And we know that it is incumbent on us to ensure that officers are of the right state of mind when they go into these very difficult situations. We want to make sure that they're able to recalibrate between calls. We also know that for every hour of overtime worked by an officer, they are more likely to use force. That's not officer nature, that's human nature. When people have worked more, when they are tired, when they're sick or hungry or forced to make a split-second decision, they are more likely to make a bad one. And so we want to make sure that our police officers, that our firefighters, that our EMS responders are in a state of wellness throughout this trial and throughout their careers. This is something that Chief Arredondo and I have championed, we've moved forward with to make sure that they have the necessary resources to put themselves in that right of state of mind, whether that's getting enough exercise, that's access to certainly a day off when they need it, and also making sure that the amount of time that they have between shifts, be it on or off duty, is acceptable so that they can get that necessary rest. That is a critical element. And so, yes, we do have resources that are invested in officer wellness, and it often gets overlooked, but it is of essential importance. Thank you, everybody.